What we're working to do and what the BCCI are working to do, and they've been incredibly cooperative, is working to move the entire cohort out of India, so where they will then wait until it's possible to return to Australia. So the BCCI has been working on a range of options. That's now narrowed down to the Maldives and Sri Lanka. We're not seeking any kind of special exemptions whatsoever.
I would describe their reaction as it created a lot of anxiety. They were quite anxious about that. I mean, they signed up for India and they signed up with their eyes wide open about some of the challenges and risks when they went in. So that's stating that up front. They always knew when they came back they would have to do isolation of 14 days to come back into the country. What they didn't expect was the borders to be closed. So that created some anxiety for them, just like it would create anxiety for the 9,000 odd Australians, I think, who are over there looking to come home. So that's just a normal reaction I would have thought from our players. That's how they feel.
That was Nick Hockley, the acting CEO for Cricket Australia, and Todd Greenberg, the CEO of the Australian Cricketers Association. I'm Menners, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. You think it's the off-season, but it is all happening in the cricket world. Kidnappings, IPL cancellations, a lot to get through. Joining me in studio is Paul Dennett. Paul, how are you?
Hey, Manners. Good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And welcome back, Jaleesa Apps from Channel 10. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well.
Wow, what a couple of days of cricket. In today's episode, we're going to call Bharat Sundaresan from Crick Buzz to discuss all the cricket news coming out of India. Then we've got the headlines. Then we're going to bring it home with Can't Let It Go. All right, let's call Bharat to kick things off.
Manners.
Bharat, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Paul and Jaleesa are here.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, Lisa. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Hey, Barrett.
Hello, Paul. What's up?
Not much. How you going?
You know,
Not bad.
I just want to mention this before we get started. Barrett actually went to Boorowa on my recommendation and had a great time from all reports. And the lovely town of Boorowa welcomed him.
Didn't you write something in Boorowa?
I did. I wrote a chapter of Suresh Raina's, and this is the amazing friendship that Lisa and I share. This is the first time we're speaking to each other, but I know all about her partner's father. I spent like an hour with him. So to set the record straight, Jalisa, you need to travel to Calcutta when things open up and meet my father-in-law. Only then are we even.
That would be my absolute pleasure because, as you mentioned, like we talk a lot on social media, and then Bharat said, "Oh, do you know anywhere in the country? Like, because he was you were stuck here, right? Because of the borders were closed. You couldn't get back to Adelaide."
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I had to drive through regional New South Wales.
Yeah, and so my partner's father, Jack Ryan, just loves visitors. Like the whole town of Boorowa loves visitors, and I just thought, I can hook you up with him.
And you know what the best part about that was? So I didn't know what he looked like. He didn't know what I looked like. But he asked me to, and it was raining as well. He asked me to wait for him somewhere near the town center, and he just directly walked towards me. He said, 6 generations of my family has lived here. We have seen nobody like you before. So, yeah.
Well, I've seen nobody like you either, Barrett, and I'm not from Boorowa, so...
That is true. I don't think the world has. My mother says the same thing. So, yeah, we're all on the same page about that, man.
Barrett, we've got so much to talk about apart from Boorowa.
Yes.
There's been so much happening. I guess the first thing I want to start with is, the situation in India with COVID is obviously awful. We're all very concerned about the population in India. How's your family going and how are you going? I mean, you're a long way from home, but there must be a lot of friends and family in a pretty tough spot back home.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you for asking, man. Yeah, it really has been a very weird time. Like here I am, making the most of being in a city like Adelaide and in a country like Australia. taking my puppy to puppy preschool and right now walking to the supermarket. Whereas my own people, like my own mother has been stuck at home for the last 18 months and not just stuck at home, just living with the fear that she can get the virus anytime. And that's true for everyone who's in India right now. It doesn't matter what age you are. A friend of mine messaged me yesterday saying, look, Bharat, I'm scared for the first time in my life, because I'm sitting at home, but I know I'm not safe. And if something happens to me, that's it. I can't even have anyone with me to deal with this. So that's the reality. And I'll be honest, Menas, I've lost family. My wife's lost family. So has every Indian, I think, around the world. Somebody or the other has succumbed to the virus. And you know what? It's just getting worse by the day.
And whereabouts exactly are your family?
So my mother's in Bombay. So I'm originally from there.
Okay.
So so Mumbai was hit the worst when the second or third wave, came about. But then it has recovered since. But I don't know whether you can call it a recovery. It's only it's very relative. Yeah.
In your interview with Jared Waitley the other day and Ravi Shastri was talking about Mumbai as though it had really recovered well. Was he being overly optimistic?
Ravi Shastri is always optimistic about everything in life. But but about the numbers itself, like he was fair. It was a fair comment because the numbers have dropped. Like they were recording like 40,000 cases a day not too long back, but now it's come down to come down to 2,000 or 4,000 cases, which looking at the rest of the country is a marked improvement. But the thing also is because Bombay has gone into lockdown. And the Mumbai police is definitely more or stricter than the cops everywhere else in the country. It's made a difference, but you know what? That I was speaking to someone else this morning. I said that's the thing about India. Like now, because COVID's in focus, we're talking only about the thousands dying because of COVID. But people can't keep the city shut for too long in India. People there is no social welfare, there is no job keeper, job seeker. So if you can't go to work for a majority of the population, you can't feed your family. So you have to get out at some point.
Do you know people who have had to sort of, I guess, risk their own life to go to work or to do things because they can't wait?
Sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how can you not, right? Because there are, and I'm not even talking about daily wage laborers, for example, who had it the toughest. I'm sure you guys have read stories about people, young kids walking thousands of kilometers just to get home, with no food and water. So, and those are extreme cases, but just the average guy, even if you're earning 30,000 rupees a month, which is an okay salary, you can't go without it like for more than a month, because how do you feed your family? So it's, in a way, everybody's sailing in the same boat right now. And it's tragic. And like I said, for Indians overseas, you just, you feel guilty at times, like I said, when you do normal things like, even go out for a walk.
And is it fair to say, and correct me if this is wrong, but my impression has been that you're absolutely right about India needing to not be able to lock down as long as a place like Australia could, but that Modi's government encouraging political rallies and attendances at weddings and religious things and even the cricket has allowed COVID to sort of take hold in a way that it otherwise might not have needed to, and that because the BCCI and the government are very much kind of, maybe intertwined is too strong a term, but does that feed into why the coverage of the IPL seems so reluctant to acknowledge the scale of the crisis, because it would be an implicit criticism of the government?
You're absolutely right on every point you made there, Paul, because it's true. I mean, intertwined is, I think you're on the money with it. They are. I mean, the secretary of the board is Jay Shah, who's the son of Amit Shah, who's the second in command to the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and who many people in the country consider to be the most powerful man in India, which is Amit Shah. So the BCCI and the government are, if not on paper, but in many ways they are intertwined. And look, after a point, I think it did become a face-saving exercise. Just keeping the IPL going on. And you're also right about the fact that you can't just blame the IPL. At least, the IPL did not have crowds from the beginning. There have been massive political rallies going on in some states which had elections finished on Sunday. And, they were definitely encouraged by all political parties, to be honest. And even today, just before, you guys called me, I saw there's some festival somewhere in Gujarat where ladies, it's something to do with, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there are thousands of people like sticking to each other on the street and just walking along, along the busy streets of Gujarat. And we've seen the Kumbh Mela, which is a very Hindu festival of sorts, where you see all these sadhus jump into the Ganges naked, and that's been allowed to go on. Having said all that, people are to blame as well. Like my own cousins, they were going on vacations like just a month back. People have been like organizing weddings and attending weddings. So people did take it very, like, they did become a little complacent. That's why I don't blame the average worker who had no other option but to leave his home to go work. But people like these have really added to the whole issue now, and well, they'll just have to suffer, I guess.
So Barrett,
what was your opinion of the IPL going ahead from the start? Not perhaps what we know now, but maybe a few weeks in when things were not going great, but they were saying it's safe, we're in a bubble. What were you feeling there, and what was the sentiment, if you know, over in India? Were people happy to have some relief to watch, or was there a sense of anger that this was going ahead?
I was personally torn, Jalisa, and so were a majority of people in India, because you heard like very strong debates from both sides. I mean, there were people, my friends, messaging me saying like, why should the IPL stop? At least for 4 or 5 hours, I have something, I have a break. And cricket, it's been called a religion in India, which I've never understood. What it really is this massive escape for a majority of people from the harsh reality of their lives. I come from a middle class family, so I'm slightly more privileged than someone from maybe poorer background. But I'm not as privileged as the really rich of India. But even for us, just daily life, you get a break by watching cricket. Cricket and Bollywood really are the only things that provide us with an escape. So for a lot of people, especially when you're locked in at home, it was a boon. It was the brightest part of their day. But at the same time, if you have someone dying in your family and or forget about dying in your family, that happens all the time. But if you can't find a bed or an ambulance for your next of kin, I don't think really cricket matters. Or then obviously you'll be frustrated when you see, like these glitzy lights and, a fake crowd noise and fake cheers from the crowd and the commentators not acknowledging it. And Jalisa, I think that's where people got frustrated. Not with the fact that the IPL is going on. I'll give you a great example. There was one game, Manners being Manners, I'm sure would have watched that game like he does all IPL games.
You're going to talk about Laxman Shivaranakrishnan?
I don't know who the commentator was. I don't remember when there was an ambulance going on the streets of Chennai.
Yeah.
So I hope it was an LS.
I thought it was. So I could be wrong.
I hope, because considering he's from Chennai, it could have been. And he said, the town goes to sleep early or something like that. When they started pretending like this IPL is happening in Mars and India is far, far away from where they are, I think that's where people were a little smarter, saying what is this? And also the whole thing about the IPL caravan system, where when you knew that Delhi is reeling, people are falling at the feet, everybody's anyone they could find their feet and asking them to find a bed for their mother and father, and then you want to move the IPL there, that just had a bad taste. And and you've seen what's happened.
Yeah, I was watching in that game, and I had the sound down, and I later on heard someone say it was LS, but it was eerie to suddenly see Chennai, and you just associate it with massive crowds, and there was just emptiness, except, as you say, that one vehicle on the road. It was very eerie.
Yeah. I didn't notice with the fake crowd noise, actually. It just seemed like a normal game. Barrett, tell me, what about the cancellation of the IPL? Obviously, in hindsight, this has been a monumental cock-up by the BCCI. They're going to cost themselves tens of millions of dollars because they didn't stage it in the UAE. I mean, were they stubborn? Were they stupid? Were they selfish? I mean, why didn't they hold it in the UAE in a tight bubble and they still could have entertained the Indian population without what we're seeing now, players stuck, the competition over, and, it's basically a catastrophe. You've got 38 of Australia's cricketers stuck over there. You've got Mike Hussey's contracted COVID. I mean, this is a massive cock-up by the BCCI.
Can't disagree at all with you there, Manas. Yeah, and the treasurer of the BCCI, Arun Dumal, has given an interview to my former employers in the Indian Express, where some of the quotes are like, you're like, what are you even saying? Like, saying, if we knew something like this was going to happen, we would have taken it overseas. But we were in the midst of a pandemic when you made this decision, and we saw what happened during the India-England series. There were crowds, and then they had to stop crowds, and then there was that other Masters tournament where even the ultimate master of Indian cricket, fell victim to the virus. Thank God he survived, Sachin Tendulkar, and where there were like 60,000 people, sitting next to each other, no masks on, and so there was a precedent for you to say, maybe maybe we shift it, or maybe we push it back, to do something about it, and again, if they had just thought on their feet and kept the tournament somehow in Mumbai or Chennai, cities which have sort of dealt with the virus better than Delhi or Ahmedabad, or and the worst thing is, Manas, they would have the next step was Bangalore and Calcutta, which are currently the worst cities right in terms of numbers right now. That's where they were headed next. So who knows? It could have been much, much worse. So it is a cock up. I mean, maybe they just got a little too ahead of themselves. But look, when the government and the people in power at the end of February said, we have defeated COVID, and they also said we are what did they say? We are the pharmacy of the world, and you shipped off vaccines. There's so much that has gone wrong, which is led to the dire situation India finds itself in, and the IPL certainly did not help.
It seems like the players over there are pretty reticent to speak up about what they've seen. Adam Zampa made a couple of comments when he came back that he didn't feel the bubble was that tight. But the Australian players over there are worried about their pay packet and getting to go back there and play in the IPL again. But do you think over the next few months we'll actually see stories emerge of the bubble was a bit of a disaster?
I think we might hear those stories in the next few days, Benas, to be honest. I'm sure there will be some things that will come out in the Indian papers to start with. And I'm sure but the interesting thing will be how many cricketers actually come on record in terms of the overseas players. I don't think the Indian players will ever come on record, and they're reticent for a reason. I can relate with it because Indian cricketers historically have never spoken out about many issues. It's only now that a couple of them at least mention something on social media about anything. Even with this, right? Going back to my answer to Jalisa's question, if when all this was happening, if the only message you can provide is, put your mask on, wash your hands, and things that by now. It's not, the pandemic's not new. It's been around for the last 20 months. If that's the best you can do, then I think you're not doing your best job as a role model where people look up to you. So in terms of the bubble breach, I'm sure there will be stories, and at some level, right, man, as I was thinking about it earlier today, this was bound to happen. Unless you had a situation where it was only the players in the bubble and they were actually cooking for each other, and they were doing their own washing, there's no way you could have stopped this, because you have people inside that bubble who are not as as illustrious or as well paid as the players are, right? They're cooking for you. I mean, look at Chennai Super Kings. The bus cleaner contracted from somewhere, and Lakshmipati Balaji gets it, support staff member, and Mike Hussey, in the same bus, or maybe it was passed on through L Balaji, his colleague in the support staff. So there was bound to be a breach. When on the doorsteps of these stadiums there are funeral pyres, are burning on the pavement. How can you, at some level, stop the bubble from being breached? Yes, it was the safest place, but was it going to stay safe for 2 months? Well, we found out not really.
Yeah, you're right. Unless they were living on tinned food and not seeing anyone, and not going within 50 metres of anyone else. The best bubble in the world is, it's going to be breached. Now, I know Indians wouldn't be thinking much about this, but in as much as they would be, what do you think the reaction would be in India when they hear of the fact that Australia has closed its borders to Australian citizens in India, obviously a sizable proportion of whom are of Indian descent?
Shock. I think, surprise, considering, see the way the Indians or Indians in general look at the West or Western countries are they're first world countries. Like they'll do anything for their citizens. They'll go out of their way and do something for the citizens. But that's really how we're brought up. I don't know, maybe that's what we are shown on movies and because that's our first exposure to the West, whether it's America, whether it's Australia or the UK. And that's how our mindset is. So you're like, okay, and I've spoken to friends. They're like, okay, I understand if India had put in such draconian measures, but Australia, really? There are some circles that some people even use the racist angle to it. I don't know whether we should subscribe to it or not, but people are like, why India? When the US was reeling last year, you didn't shut flights from there. So, there are so many angles that you can look at it, but people in India are surprised, what? You have your cricketers, and especially with the cricketers, which is kind of silly when there are other 8,000 other people there, but more than anything, they'll be like, so you don't want Pat Cummins back, really? We'll keep him if you want to.
What about you? Do you feel different about the country you now live in?
I understand. My opinion is of course changed, and it's flavored by the fact that I've lived here for the last 2.5 years. I understand how Australian society works to an extent. The fact that 2 or 3 cases in a state, and you have the ability to lock down a state completely. I know from personal experience, I would have never gone to Burova if not for state closures. So,
sorry, keep going.
No, that's fine.
I just found it interesting, Bharat, that you're saying, as someone who, I guess, when you're looking at Western culture and you think, you're sort of saying, well, that's the way that we sort of think it's not really a Western thing to do. As someone who, my family's been here for, generations, and I have Anglo-Saxon background, very boring background. I'm completely shocked and really disgusted that it's not just, from the outside looking in, it's people who have been, born and bred here and got a lot of ancestry here. I find it quite shocking, and you open up your passport and it says you are afforded all the protections of this country, and I'm just absolutely baffled, and I would love just one constitutional lawyer to just want to make a name for themselves and take it on, because I just find it completely bizarre that as a Western country who's always been quite progressive, that we would lock out anybody.
I feel the same way.
Especially nobody's saying just bring them back and just release them into into normal society.
Yeah.
Anyway, they'll have to quarantine. And you have quarantine facilities. There are new ones popping up all around the country. And I'm sure you can spread them out in this massive continent that is Australia, and find space. And that's one thing that I'll be honest, when I actually found out there are 8,000, 9,000 still in India, I was a little surprised, because I know of a lot of Indians who were stuck all around the country who have it's unfair comparing numbers when it comes to India and Australia, when it comes to people and numbers, but I was surprised that so many people are still kind of stuck and have been unable to come back, some for a long, long time.
I think because I sort of have a friend of a friend who's in that category, and he's been stuck over there for a really long time because, first of all, the flights were not available, but also just extremely expensive and near impossible. And yeah, I find it, as you said, you come back, you quarantine, you're not you're coming back, and we didn't do it when the proportions got to the same point in other countries. I find it a very bizarre decision.
I also think that in addition to those who are stuck and can't get back, there are those who might have chosen not to come back, and that's not a crime. You might be over there on very good job, doing really well, and
Or with family.
yeah, you shouldn't have to suddenly say. I mean, I've got friends who are overseas at the moment in that situation, not in India, but in a country that potentially something really bad could happen. And if that did happen and the government sort of implicitly said, well, you could have come back any time over the last 18 months, it would be, yeah, but at the expense of a dream job and a kind of a material change in your quality of life. And I agree that the Australian government should say we're going to do whatever we can to get our citizens home if they want to come home.
I'm glad that they haven't sort of made an exception for the cricketers, though. I think that point does. I mean, that would be really horrific if you did make an exception for a bunch of elite players.
But I don't think they were really ever. They've never really been asking for an exception.
They've never asked. No, they made that point today. They said we still won't ask for an exemption.
Yeah. I think that if Cricket Australia charter something to get them home and that's something that's not available to others, well, that's kind of their employer doing it.
Yeah.
I think the BCCI is going to pay for this charter. That's what's come out at the press conference today. So Cricket Australia have been very smart, and they're going to say it's not our charter, it's the BCCI charter. So that kind of gets them out of hot water. But I actually disagree on one part to that I kind of think the cricketers do deserve an exemption, that these are our national representatives. They play for our national team. Some of them are national heroes, and we can't just abandon them and to sort of lump them with, the 9,000 other Aussies that are over there. It's not the same. Pat Cummins means more to this country than just a lot of people.
What? So no, but there is. There's a lot of people that are in Australian-based companies that have gone over for work over there, and we just go, oh well, you're not. You're
not Pat Cummins.
I don't care.
I care, and the country cares. I mean,
oh my God! Check your privilege.
Well, I'm not saying I deserve exemption.
No, but that's like, I'm sure Pat Cummins wouldn't go, well, I'm better than this person that works
I'm not
for
saying they're better
for a
than
bank,
that. I'm not
so
saying
let
they're
me
better,
home.
But they're over there playing in the IPL. Australia is in bed with the BCCI in cricket terms. I think they've gone over there. They're pseudo-representing Australia. They should be fucking protected.
They're not representing
Australia.
Australia.
Who's going to win the Ashes for us next summer if 38 cricketers are stuck in India?
You're just saying outrageous things.
No, I genuinely believe
Throw the line out.
that if the Australian cricketers are put on a pedestal for a reason because they're our heroes.
We'll talk about this off air.
I mean, what I would say, guys, is I think thanks to the IPL, in some strange way, it's really brought this issue into more focus, right? If the IPL wasn't on, if there weren't 40 Australian cricketers or ex-cricketers in India right now, and if Michael Slater hadn't tweeted what he tweeted, I wonder whether this issue would have become like this national dialogue. It would have, but
That's
to
true.
this extent.
We'd be talking about Stuart McGill getting kidnapped tonight instead of the IPL. I've got a couple of questions before we let you go, Barrett. What are the long-term implications of the IPL being called off? There's a couple of elements. Obviously, the World T20 now is in grave doubt that it can be hosted in India. And secondly, I have a fear that the BCCI will just now try and shoehorn the rest of the IPL into the calendar somewhere this year, come what may. They'll just go, well, doesn't matter what's going on. We're going to play it in the UAE the second half, whether that's, when the Australian summer starts or not.
I mean, they've already said that they're looking at September as being a window as soon as they come back from their tour of England, which is a pretty long tour, which also includes the World Test Championship final. So they're not going to give up. I mean, just like, the fact that they've said it's postponed, which we've seen with a lot of other series as well. I don't think they will use the word cancelled as yet because there is still a lot of money at stake. They will find a way. Look, their BCCI, the one thing they've done with the IPL since it began is they have found some way or the other to make it happen. Like, in very different circumstances. In 2009, the second year, you guys would remember, it was taken to South Africa in the space of 3 days. They found some way to take the whole league to South Africa. In 2014, they took it to the UAE because there were elections. Last year, they managed the whole show in the UAE. While the rest of the world was fighting a pandemic, they somehow took all these players and all these people to the UAE. So, you'd back them in a strange way to, find a way to pull this off. So that's really you're right about that. They'll whether it's in September or whether it's sometime else, I don't know, because personally I don't see how they can they'll make it happen. But also it also tells you about the mindset of India in general right now, guys, because people are saying May 15th is when it's going to peak. There are people almost believing that, okay, after May 15th, things are just naturally going to become better, right?
Yeah.
It's like D-Day, and then things just not automatically become better. But from what we're seeing, I don't think that's the case. The virus is spreading at a rapid pace. We're just hearing about newer and deadlier variants every day.
I hope the 15th of May thing is true, but it just doesn't seem like it could be.
No, it's based on what? Like,
Probably optimistic modelling.
Very
But
optimistic.
even, I suppose, even if in theory that's the day that case numbers peaked, and I'd be very surprised if that were the case. The deaths are still going to be accelerating because of all the cases that are coming in that have come in the last couple of weeks that still haven't led to deaths yet. So I hope it peaks on the 15th of May, but I don't think it will.
Yeah, I mean, that's what apparently the so-called experts are saying. But it doesn't look like it's gonna improve anytime soon, because now, like it happens in India, the virus is the whole thing has started spreading into tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which have even more even more limited medical and health resources. So that's really not a good sign. I mean, we just have to wait and watch to see how that goes.
Well, guys, any more questions for Bharat? We've kept you way
I
longer
have
than I thought.
1,000, but
You guys just want to reminisce about Burawa.
Oh yeah, that's what I was trying to get back to. No, I have 1,000, but we better let him actually enjoy his night.
Well, Bharat, thank you for joining us on the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. We wish all you and your family all the best through this tough time. We hope everyone pulls through, and we're thinking of you.
We are.
Thank you so much, guys. And like I've been saying over the last 2 weeks, whoever is listening to this and whoever you speak to, just ask them to send all their prayers and blessings to India, because they can do with it right now. It's not easy. It's just to just put it into perspective. Think about it. In 2021, someone told me the other day, it's like people are suffocating and dying. So that's how bad it is. Send all your love to India, and hopefully they'll come out the other side bright, and and we'll see everyone reach their respective homes and everyone's safe.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us,
Thank
Bharat.
you so much.
Thanks, Bharat.
No worries at all. Cheers. Bye.
Great stuff there from Bharat Sundaresan. I can't believe you want to abandon our Aussie cricketers,
I don't want
Jaleesa.
to abandon them.
You do.
No,
You just wanna
no.
leave them
I
over
don't
there.